Okay, and then could you start by saying and spelling your name, please?
Sure. My name is Kathleen Toomey. Kathleen Toomey.
Great. And then just as a start, if you don't mind, could you give me just a brief thumbnail sketch of your life, who you are, where you've been, what you've done, what you're doing now?
Sure. I'm 27 years old. I've always lived in the Boston area. I grew up on the South Shore, actually. My mom is a nurse here in town, and my dad's actually a lawyer for Department of Social Services, Department of Children and Families, whatever it is now. I'm the oldest of three, and I got married when I was 22, so I was pretty young. And since then, I've been working, and I have two children, two sons. I have a son that is 2, and I have a son that is now 10 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And I got laid off when I was on maternity leave with my older son, and I was unemployed for up until 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
So,
and laid off from what, and now employed as what?
I was a dispatcher for a limo company here in Boston, and actually I got another job at a very similar thing right near the airport.
Uh-huh. Can you talk a little bit about your own sense of kind of the current moment in America? I mean, either starting with, well, you can start wherever you want. I mean, when I ask people about this current moment, people seem to have very strong feelings about it, but people define it in very different ways. But when I say that phrase to you, what does it conjure up for you, and what are your thoughts about where we are right now as a nation?
I think right now really started right around the inauguration of Obama. I think that's when things started changing, both for the better and for the worse, depending on who you're talking to. I had a lot of hope, especially since my first son was born like 3 days after Obama's inauguration. I'm like, oh great, he's going to be born into something that I wasn't born into, and everything's going to be at least a little bit better. I didn't have complete faith that Obama would change everything, although I hoped that he would. And since then, in the last 2 years, it almost seems like the backlash against it has grown stronger and stronger, and I just, I can't understand why.
So you were taken by surprise by the backlash against him?
I guess I'm never surprised by anything, but I'm surprised at the vitriol and how much it's been elevated in the last 2 years, to where I almost think that I just started a new office, and if I say, hey, I did this protest against Sarah Palin, I'm almost afraid of what people are going to say, because it's almost acceptable to hate the president when it wasn't acceptable 6 years ago. He would have been branded a loony and a leftist, and why you hate America. And now it's completely acceptable, because why? I don't understand why that changed. Is it because Obama's black? Is it because he represents Democrats?
What is your own sense of that? I mean, how much, from your experience of these conversations, or just hearing the cultural conversation we're having, how important is race to these discussions, and how much of it is a kind of corporate right-wing agenda, how much of it is Republicans and Democrats, how much of it is the kind of polarization that we've seen in our political life over the last decade or more? How do you parse this out?
I'm not sure how much of it is race. I would like to think that it's not that big of a deal, but it's hard, because I've always worked in like a kind of blue-collar setting, and everyone's kind of from this area and very white. And I haven't seen a lot of overt racism, but when I was putting this protest together, the Tea Party, on the other hand, I had said that the Tea Party was, had some racist elements into it, and I got hammered pretty bad for that. So.
Okay, well, let's talk about the whole experience, just from the genesis of your idea to have this protest. I mean, kind of in response to what, and what form it took, and then if you could just kind of narrate the protest itself, and then some of the fallout from it.
It kind of started as a practical joke. Someone said on an internet forum, "How can we best, fight this Tea Party that's coming to Boston?" And what would it do? And I said, I think it would be a great practical joke to have just a bunch of people dress up like a Tea Party and be like, "Hey, we thought it was a Tea Party. What is this crap?" And then it kind of grew from there. And I was surprised what the response was, especially when we said we weren't going to be overtly fighting the Tea Party, and with other signs that are just as just as mean and snarky. But all of a sudden people started joining calls, and I put a Facebook page up, and all of a sudden there was like 300 replies yes, and I was like, okay, I better take this seriously and actually do it. I don't want people to show up without me, at least. I might as well be a part of it. So I pulled the permits, which I'd never done before, and it was an interesting process. And then the media started getting in touch with me, and I was, just this unemployed mom that's, a part-time college student at community college, and it was kind of a little bit overwhelming, but it was a fun time, actually. I didn't sleep the night before. I almost missed the train. I should have just driven.
So this was in Boston Common?
Yes, this was in Boston Common.
And how many people showed up?
For us, probably about 150 all throughout the day, because so many people on Facebook said they're going to go, and they never go. And I expected that, but it was a pretty good turnout. And everyone, it was hard to kind of wrangle everyone and make sure that there wasn't somebody there that would make us look bad when the media came by, because of course they were going to come by. And
right.
The Herald came by, and Michelle McPhee came by and wanted me to be on her show, but I said no, because I wasn't in it to get lambasted. I was just in it to have fun. So I picked and chose who I talked to, just because I didn't, I'm not going to be here to be fair and balanced, I don't need to be made fun of, so that was important to me. I didn't really feel like being made fun of either way, although it did happen.
Yeah, so tell me a bit more about the day. I mean, what was the feeling of the day? What was the feeling of the crowd? How much interaction was there between you and the Tea Partiers themselves?
I was surprised by how civil most of them were. There were a few that, said nasty things or said we were, crazy or stupid or, but most of them just thought it was kind of funny. There was one lady that's in all the pictures that dressed kind of sloppily and had a sign that just was a giant arrow and called us all liberal moonbats. And she had a giant American flag hat on. And she stayed for a while just pointing her sign at people and being in pictures. But eventually she broke down because we were so nice to her. And she was listening to Howie Carr on her Walkman, like real Walkman with the tape deck and everything. She eventually broke down and had a cup of tea with us because no one would interact with her, which was great. I thought that was it was great on the part of our party goers that no one actually got mad and said anything stupid. So trying to get 150 people to not say anything stupid during a Sarah Palin rally is kind of amazing. I didn't think that would happen.
And then what was the coverage like? How did the media treat the whole event?
We were really just a footnote. Obviously, the main speaker is Sarah Palin, and there wasn't anything really, we weren't being made fun of. It was just kind of a footnote, and obviously it was on the Herald, who obviously treated us kind of like a joke more than, because they're not really known as the left-leaning newspaper of the Boston area. But Globe kind of had a write-up. The Harvard Crimson did. There were a couple of college students that came around for their newspapers and interviewed us.
And this was the spring of...
Last spring.
This was last spring?
Last April 14th.
Okay. And what's your sense of kind of where we are now versus where we were then? I mean, what's your sense of Sarah Palin, for example, it looks like maybe her star is fading, or what's your sense of how much has or hasn't changed since this event that you
I think it's gotten worse, even though Sarah Palin is kind of treated as a joke right now, thankfully more than she was a year ago. But I think there's so many, it just keeps gaining strength, the Tea Party movement. Then the Tea Party movement was just a joke and nobody really took it seriously at that point, and now it's grown to... It's
kind of captured the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's scary, and there's Tea Party candidates and...
What's your sense of what's going on in Wisconsin, how important it is, or how you're thinking about, in the long run, how significant are these protests in Madison? I
think it's significant, and I'm proud of how many people on both sides have come up and stood for those, and said, hey, we need these unions. I can't believe what is happening here, and why aren't we going after the big business? I don't understand why these budget cuts are, going after these teachers in Waukesha who were driving 97 Hyundais, or whatever. It's a meme going around an internet thing, and I'm happy that a lot of people are actually noticing this and standing up. And in the same breath, I think it's going to be in another 2 months, no one's even going to remember it.
Oh, really? So you think this is a flash in the pan?
Yeah, a lot of things are. Especially when it's so partisan, we just kind of forget about things and we just kind of let it happen.
Is that a function of the media universe that we're living in, where there's just the 24-hour cycle, or are there other things at work about just the dailiness of American life that keeps people from really focusing on something for any stretch of time.
Yeah, I mean, time just keeps going on, and there's another ridiculous story in the paper, and we just can't, as humans, just like process it all. Like I read these, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. And then in 2 weeks, I'm like, I just can't even think about how ridiculous it is, or my entire energy would be going towards that, and I would just cry all night. You know, like the Cordoba House thing, and how we're just fighting this for what reason, and you know, the facts of the case don't matter to all these people. That, you know, it was so logical that they were there, and then these people would just, you know, I can't believe they're there, the Muslims, and thankfully that worked in favor, because it was just a flash in the pan, and everybody forgot about it, and then they were left, you know, still there.
Yeah, although now Congressman Peter King is just opening his hearings on Islamic America. We'll see what that leads to, but I don't think it can be good. Yeah. What's your feeling been about Obama overall as a president?
I wish he hadn't. I mean, I still think he's great. I think he's a great president, and he's doing what he can. You know, he's a human being. But I think that just kowtowing to these Republicans when they stand up and say we're going to do this. I can't believe that he let the tax cuts go through. At that point, when he let the Bush tax cuts, he, you know, renewed them instead of letting them expire. That was just a huge, like, you know, moment. Like, why did you do this? You could have had it another way. I'm pretty sure you could have done that. You know.
Do you think that it's his temperament, or is it something institutional, or it's his kind of strategic political style? I mean, how do you understand his continual kind of holding out the olive branch to this opposition that's been so unrelenting?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's his personality, or if it's like, if it is a strategic plan, I don't think it's working. I mean, it's kind of like the fool me once, shame on me. But it's not working, and it's just making the left mad at him, and it's making the right just laugh at him, and it's just not working out in the way that he planned, I don't think. And I would like to see him stand up a little bit more, but I think it's a little bit too late for a lot of things. I mean, I'm still a supporter, but I was really, really massively disappointed, especially the tax cuts. That was like the final straw of disappointment, I think.
And you said you mentioned that you thought things were worse now than they were a few years ago. Is your basic sense of things pessimistic?
No, I like to be optimistic, and I still think it's not all that bad. But especially in my personal life, where things, because of the recession and because of being laid off, just kept getting worse and worse and worse, especially in regards to our health care. You know, we used to have great health care. I used to have an amazing job with great benefits, and then I got laid off. And then we were on my husband's less great health care, and then he lost his job because he was injured, and then now we're on COBRA, and we pay $1,000 a month for, you know, terrible health care, and we're in this crazy loophole where we're not yet available, we don't yet have government health care available to us because we're a little bit too rich, and also because we do have the COBRA available to us, but we've had a lot of health problems, and we can't just give up our health care. And so we keep getting poorer and poorer, and I keep getting a little bit more pessimistic that, you know, the American dream isn't going to be for all of us, and it's getting harder and harder.
Right.
And it just makes me that much more angry when, you know, all the Republicans are saying they're going to cut WIC, which we are on right now because we, you know, fit into the limits for that. And even with my new job, where I make hundreds of dollars less than I did on unemployment. So I think it's a personal thing for me, where I'm just, you know, getting more and more angry that, you know, the Tea Party says that they represent the American people, and they're mad about paying taxes, but they're not representing me, and I'm, you know, keep falling. And I think I tried to do everything right. You know, we had 2 incomes, we had everything right, and then once we started having kids, everything kind of slid. And I know a lot of people like that too, but we're just so much poorer than we were 2 years ago, and I think it's a major factor in the way people are feeling right now.
During that period that you were laid off, were you looking for work through that whole period?
I was having problems, though, because I had it set up where if I was to go back to my job, which I was completely planning on doing, I was going to go back part-time, 3 days a week, and we had worked it with my schedule with my husband so that he would be home and we would avoid daycare, which was a major cost. So when I got laid off, that wasn't an option anymore, because when I would have to go back, I would have to go find either a part-time or full-time job, and everyone was hiring for about half of what I used to make, which would be 3/4 of what a child in daycare would make. It's like, I'm going to make $12 an hour and pay $10 an hour to daycare. So I kind of was stuck where I couldn't really find a job even or accept one. And then finally I got to a point where I could find a part-time job that worked where my husband can stay home with our sons. So that was a little bit difficult.
Through that period, and you've known a lot of other people who have been struggling either with layoffs or downsizing or...
Yeah, I don't know. It hit my friends group pretty hard. I know that the number was between 9 and 10% of unemployment around the country, but it seemed like more like 15% of my friends had been laid off. So that was a little difficult. And they started returning to work. Some are still now only in part-time or temporary jobs. And a lot of college-educated people just, working in retail still to this day. And where they thought they would be in 5 years has totally changed for the worse. And it's kind of sad and, kind of gets people down sometimes. So I think that...
Is the economy in Boston in general turning around, or is it still just kind of fits and starts?
Yeah, it's fits and starts, I think, because... the economy, the customer service jobs are going away, but there's a lot of biotech. So if you're educated in certain areas, education and biotech, you're great. You can find something, but it's hard for customer service because I've been doing customer service my whole life. It's a little bit harder to find things. So I have been in school the entire time too. It's been kind of hard, especially with 2 kids. I've just been going as much as I can, but I've been at it for 5 years and I've still have an entire semester and a half to go before I can get a bachelor's.
And you said you grew up in Boston? I
grew up in Weymouth for the first 10 years of my life, which is just right on the South Shore, on the other side of Quincy. And then my parents moved us to Foxborough when I was 10, so I've been there. They were there since. And when I was 18, I moved out and I got a job right away. I didn't want to go to college, so I was making like $9 an hour, and I had a little apartment up in Methuen for a few years before I met my husband.
And your family, how did they end up in this area? Have they been here for a long time?
My grandfather worked for the FBI, actually, and he was stationed up here in Boston, and so he moved my dad's family up. And my mom's side of the family, her father, his uncle was actually Larry O'Brien, the Democratic Party chairman, and then he was, chairman of the NBA for a while. So they were in this area as well. He was out in Springfield. My grandfather lived out in Springfield and came over here, and they worked in finance for a while. So it's kind of weird. It's part of my family's original from Texas, and so it's just kind of a hodgepodge. And we haven't been here for very long. So.
Well, I really appreciate your taking the time today. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about, or anything that you haven't said that you wished you'd said?
I'm not sure. It's just tough. I just wish that it was easier for people right now that are in my position, where we're kind of working class, and it's hard right now to see this Republican budget coming out where it's like it's going to cut all these things that really help us. Like I said, we're on WIC right now. We're hoping to get off of it, but where I just had like 3 surgeries in a row right after my son was born, so paying for formula would be way too much for us. It would be like, more than our food budget for the rest of us, and if they cut our WIC, then we would be kind of screwed, because we need formula, because I can't even breastfeed anymore because I had so many surgeries that it was just kind of impossible. I was knocked out for so long. So things like that I don't understand why people would do that, want to cut poor people, and then, all these giant corporations not paying taxes. I don't understand why that would be a Democrat thing to want to keep these programs, and then the Republicans, who, especially the Tea Party, that claims to be for these Americans that don't want to pay taxes anymore, and the average guy that feels pinched. The average guy that feels pinched is going to need these government programs. Especially.
Well, that's one of the ironies to me, is that feeling the pinch, that government has emerged as the villain.
Yeah.
When for generations, at least a few generations, the whole idea of the American dream was really built on things that government was doing in terms of guaranteeing loans or making education available in a democratic way. And now you have these kind of rapacious corporations on the one hand, and but somehow they're off scot-free, and nobody is really talking about that nearly as much, or at least in some quarters. There's no critique of them. It's all anti-government.
Yeah, the one thing that struck me as so hypocritical is right after the protest. I guess there was a forum for cops, and they were just lambasting me because all they knew about me was that I was unemployed and from Gloucester, and they were just glomming on to the unemployed part, saying we live, your kids are being raised by the government money and taxpayer money, and we I can't even use the words that they said about me, and like you never had to. You sometimes have to deal with layoffs as a cop, but very few. I mean, you have a pretty good salary. I mean, I understand that it's worth it. We pay these people good money because I wouldn't want to do that job, but at the same time, you have great government benefits. Everyone I know that works for the government has pretty good benefits, except for teachers and a few other people. But my dad's got pretty good benefits. He gets paid less than he would if he was just some corporate lawyer getting big bucks, but it's something he likes to do. And it's like, I can't believe, why are you going after me? And it was also scary because these are supposed to be the people that keep me safe. And they're saying these horrible words about me, and they don't even know me. If they had known me, I mean, I think they would have realized that I'm not a villain. This is just something I wanted to do because I wanted to get my voice heard. Mm-hmm. And so that was the scariest. And kind of kept me up for a few nights thinking, what am I going to do, if I need to call the cops.
So thinking back on the protest itself, how important is that in your own life? I mean, is that something that you think you might want to do again? That kind of organizing, or kind of public statement?
It was a lot. It took a lot of my time and thankfully I was I only had like one class going on at the time, and I didn't realize I was pregnant at the time with my second son. We'd just been starting, so. I all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. So it was kind of like, I forgot about the protest almost immediately, and I couldn't really do anything else because I was just busy puking the entire time for the next 3 months straight. So it was a little bit hard. I think I would like to try it again. I mean, the Rally for Sanity kind of came up after that, and I was like, well, other people are doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I could probably keep doing it, but, other people have the same idea. I'll let people who actually, handle events and protests on a daily basis that they really like it and they're good at it, maybe do that instead of me. I kind of didn't know what I was doing. I've worked in events before, but not capacity.
Not like that, right?
So it would be something I'd be interested in, but at the same time.
It does kind of raise a question, though. I mean, you were talking earlier about, we were talking about Obama's handling of his opposition and whether it's the temperament or strategy, the kind of decisions he's made, mm-hmm. and many times has kind of caved in, or at least compromised further than many of us would want. Do you feel that have his supporters let him down, do you think? Is that part of the story here? I mean, I've heard people say that. I've also heard people argue the opposite.
I'm not sure his supporters, do they have that ability to let him down? We supported him, and then he started making all these choices that weren't what he said he was going to do, and so I can't imagine that it would be anybody's fault for kind of letting him down. If he had kind of stuck to what he was saying, I thought we all thought he was going to be this bulwark of kind of liberal, leftist kind of thing. I don't know. It's hard because he has no fans now. Or, well, of course he still does, but
right. Well, I think
it's also so easy to judge him, but we haven't been there obviously, and it's very hard to do that job, and I can't imagine why anyone would want to do that job.
Right now, especially.
Yeah. He's going to be hated no matter what. Anything he does is going to be scrutinized because he's that guy. And no one's going to be happy with anything he does. It's so easy to criticize him.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks.